Hi, welcome to Module 4. We are so excited to have you guys with us again, and today we are going to be doing the Response Not Required section of the Master PAL series. Hello, I am Jeanna Antrim. I am an AAC facilitator for the Belleville Area Special Services Cooperative.
And hi, I'm Maggie, Judson, an AAC specialist with basscAAC as well. And again, we want to thank Tabitha Jones-Wohleber for making this available and for PrAACtical AAC having it up on the blog so that everyone can get access to these awesome, wonderful modules.
All right, so the Model as a Master PAL series is all about us becoming supporting and very exemplary AAC communication partners. So to be able to better support our students and our AAC users.
All right, so something to keep in mind throughout today, we'll be talking a lot about AAC today and throughout the training series, but the communication partner skills and the communication partner strategies that we're going to discuss and learn about can apply when working with any student with language and communication needs, not just students that are using or learning AAC.
All right, and here's the breakdown of the model as a Master PAL and what it represents. We've talked about communication, aided language input. Last time we talked about time in the presuming potential sections. And today, again, we're going to be talking about response not required.
All right, so Master PAL, we like these breakdowns of what it means. So first, master. So this is when you're becoming a skilled practitioner, you are acquiring knowledge in, you're becoming skilled in something. So some synonyms to think about, you're becoming an expert, you're becoming knowledgeable in, you're learning it from the inside out. So when we become a Master PAL, we're really learning the strategies and we're becoming knowledgeable and proficient in using them with our students who use AAC.
And then the PAL part just represents that we're going to be their friend, their buddy, their comrade, their companion. So we need to be skilled in being able to help them and support them as an AAC user. But at the same time, we also don't want to do that whole testing situation and have that demand or compliance situation on them. We need to be somebody that they see as a buddy or a companion and somebody that they want to come communicate to and are motivated to communicate to. So that's where that PAL part comes into play.
All right, so AAC, it's that umbrella term that encompasses all the different methods and tools that we use to either supplement our spoken and written speech or replace our spoken or written language and speech. So it can be low tech, no tech, high tech. It's all the different ways that we communicate that is not verbal speech.
And here's just a reminder, the Communication Bill of Rights. If you haven't printed these off, please do so.
Yes.
Please do so. They're just a great visual support and reminder that I think even helps empower you. Whenever you see them, you feel empowered to help your AAC users, and even going over it with your AAC user and helping them feel empowered as well. So it's a great visual to put up in your classroom and everything. So please print them out.
Yes. All right, and then one little other thing to keep in mind. So if you're here and you're like, I don't know, I have a student, I'm not sure if they would benefit from AAC or if they would need AAC incorporated into their language day and therapy, what's something to keep in mind? So if your student is, we like to think of it just one question. So is their speech meeting their communication needs? And if the answer to that is no, then yes, they could benefit from AAC, which is why we are so excited that you're here through the Master PAL training series to learn all these good communication partner skills.
And our topic for today, now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it.
Yes.
So response not required. And as it says down at the bottom, this purely means that it's going to be pauses without pressure to help support learning and to convey respect. And we're going to dive deep into the subject.
All right, so with response not required, again, it's that pause without pressure. that we talked on last module, how giving that wait time can help support learning and allows that learning to happen and then gives that time for our students to respond. So the key concept here is that communication is intrinsically motivating and interactions may not always elicit a response. So we have some examples that we're going to go into in like everyday interactions when maybe we don't like to respond right on the spot either.
So we do not live in a black and white world where we automatically know our responses to everything all the time. It never happens. I mean, I get text messages throughout the day. Some of them I can quickly respond to. It's like a yes or no, or I can do an emoji and respond and, share my opinion. And other ones I need to wait until the end of the day whenever I have time to really look at it and think about the words that I want to use and what I do want to say in response to that text message. Same with a phone call. Whenever you're maybe somebody asks you a question, you don't know the answer right away, or you don't know exactly what your opinion is, and you need to think about it or look something up and then get back to them. Think about job offers. When you got a job offer on the phone, sometimes you don't communicate if you want to accept that job offer right away. You need to weigh the pros and cons, or maybe you've had a couple of job offers and you think about them and which one you really want to take. So we do not respond right away throughout our days for different situations. We take time, we think about what our opinion is, what kind of stand we want to take before we respond, and then get back to that person. Or sometimes we don't respond at all because
Yeah.
we're really not sure, or we just don't want to share our response to that situation. And that's okay. So it's also okay for our AAC users. They need time to process as well and to see and kind of watch how others interact in those situations and how they respond, and then decide and process how they want to respond. So it is okay for them as well to take that time to process through and not give a response right away. Just like it's okay for us, it's definitely okay for them as well.
Jeanna, bringing up how, when you get a text, I'm very much where I would always prefer text or an email versus a phone call, right? Because you
Yeah.
do have that built-in buffer that you
Yes.
can take that time. So when it is a phone call, you're always like, I don't know, feeling a little
You're on the
anxious already.
spot.
Yeah, because you're on the spot and it's like, oh no, I feel like the pressure, I have to respond right now, which you don't. You can say, let me get back to you, but it's so much
Yeah.
easier in a text or an email to do that. So that was making me chuckle internally when you brought that up. Think about when you're learning like a new topic or idea. This happens in trainings a lot, and you kind of get put on the spot, and the person presenting will like ask you to like give an example or what do you think, and everyone you can just see everybody in the group kind of sit back where they're like, yeah, like who's going to go first? Because I want more time to think and I want to see what other people say too. I'm always like, I like to be the second person because then that first person makes me think of something and helps me organize what I want to say. So we do that ourselves as well. And then think about like last month's module when you watched the video, that was a longer one, right? So at the end, you might have thought to yourself, oh good, I'm glad that's done. That was a lot of information I cannot take in anymore. I need to let it sink in. So by taking all of these examples, it's like by taking that position of you don't have to respond when I make a comment to you or I ask you a question, it has that mindset for us that it takes that pressure off the interaction. And again, it continues for us to take that responsibility of aided language input and demonstrating language. It takes us out of that testing situation and then that teaching situation. So asking open-ended questions, using descriptive language, things that we've talked about. It keeps the conversation moving forward, even if a response doesn't come from our students. So these are just some good examples that show that it is a real life thing for all people, that we like to have that opportunity to respond after we've had think time and wait time, and we've had time to formulate what we want to say.
I like how you brought up the whole aided language input and the teaching the language, because that flows perfectly into this next slide. This is a quote from Jane Corson. I can't remember if we touched on this in a previous module or not. This is a very popular quote. If you haven't heard it before, though, it's the average 18-month-old has been exposed to 4,380 hours of oral language at a rate of 8 hours per day from birth. A child who has a communication system, or AAC, and receives speech and language therapy 2 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes will reach the same amount of language exposure in their AAC language in 84 years. We know that language is taught without that expectation of a response required. When we have our babies, you have your children, you're talking to them all the time, and you're not expecting a response, but you're exposing them to that language to help them learn that language. My husband speaks German, and he is raising our children to be bilingual as well. He exposes them to that German language. You know, whenever you think about your foreign language classes, when you went into them, you're exposed to that language for how many hours in a day before you were really required to say something back and started expecting to be able to do that expressively as well within your class. It is the same for our kids who are AAC users. This is a language that they are learning. And so they have to have so much exposure to it, hours upon hours of exposure to it, before we can expect them to really then start to use it to be able to functionally communicate. We may see some here and there, but we have to keep in mind that just because they're starting to show us some, that they still need lots of exposure. There is such a teaching component to this that is ongoing. Maggie and I always talk about how it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. We have to be in it for the long haul, and we have to remember that even though they're starting to show progress in some areas, that we still have to be teaching them that vocabulary. And teaching by providing that aided language input where we're speaking our words on their AAC system and not expecting that response from them. We're expecting engagement, but not necessarily a response from them.
Jeanna, I like how you brought up the second language learning. I think we touched on that in the last module, but like you think, if you've heard about how people take language courses or they're getting their a degree in learning a second language in college, one of the last things they do is they go for a semester and live in that country. So it's total language immersion, because we know that that is a fundamental piece to become proficient in that language, is that you are in that language, you're being immersed in it daily. And the same holds true for AAC. It's like learning another language, like we've touched about. It is learning another language. So if we're not doing that language immersion, we are not building up that foundational piece of receptive learning that we know you have to have first before you can express yourself in that language. So I just thought that was very interesting and a very good point for this module about aided language input and demonstration, and giving that time to allow students to learn that language without the pressure of responding. So I really liked it.
I think we all feel the pressure, don't you think?
Yeah.
Like, we have to show progress. And I think we've talked about this either in this module series or in our PrAAC one, but we all feel that pressure that, especially like if our boss walks in, administrator, that like we need to show progress. We need to show that they can use this communication device, but we have to take that time to teach them to learn and provide that aided language input. Otherwise, we're never going to show progress, because they're never going to learn it if it's in a testing situation and not in an engaging, motivating, wanting to learn situation.
I think a fun way to kind of show that progress, maybe not necessarily for your IEP goals, but it can almost be like to track yourself, or to like track the classroom, or to keep track of like how many times are we providing an aided, like how many times are we providing aided language input? Like how many demonstrations are we giving in a lesson within an hour? So like feeling that need to show that progress, like you could do it to yourself, you could do it to that classroom, so that you can say, hey, you know, last month we only hit 50 demonstrations of, of the AAC system within the day, but this month we were up to 100. That's awesome, guys. Like, let's keep it going. So there are different ways to kind of help, so that way you do have some of that data and some of that progress to show, but it's more about putting the onus on us, because we have to teach it, and in order to teach it, we have to be providing aided language input all day long. So yeah, that definitely is something to think about and brainstorm, because we do feel that pressure. So
Yeah,
thinking about it and coming up with solutions can help that situation.
for sure.
All right, so we have a video here. It's a video about aided language input, so we'll watch it and then we'll talk about it a bit.
Learning to communicate using picture systems can be challenging for anyone who is nonverbal, minimally verbal, or is an emerging communicator. It can be especially difficult if the student has autism. This video will explain one strategy used to support language development and teach children to communicate with their picture-based augmentative communication systems. This strategy is called aided language. Aided language is also known as aided language stimulation, aided language input, aided language immersion, or augmented language. It was created by Elder, Gossens, and Crane, and is based on the idea that by watching others use pictures during motivating activities, children begin to learn that the picture symbols can be used as communication tools. To practice aided language, we model or provide examples to the child of how to communicate using pictures. The concept is simple. You have to speak with pictures if you want them to speak in pictures. If you were teaching them French, you would speak to them in French. They have to be exposed to people speaking with pictures in order to learn how to speak with pictures like you would do in any language immersion program. This is how it would look like. You will pair the key word with his pictures as you talk. For example, if you want to tell the child time to eat your crackers, you would point to crackers. As you get better at speaking with pictures, you will start using more keywords. For example, you might say, time to eat your crackers. In addition to modeling directives, you also need to comment on what the child is hearing, seeing, and doing with body language. For example, if you see that the child is resting his head on the table and rubbing his eyes, you can say, I think you're tired. Aided language can be used with low-tech communication systems or high-tech communication systems. In this next video, you're going to see a child with his EA and his EA providing support with a high-tech communication device that she carries.
I'm gonna break. Okay, right low. Not yet. I need you to have something to eat. Good job.
You should use aided language to model communication for many purposes, such as making comments. Look, I'll go in. Asking questions. Where did you go? Sharing information. She has new shoes. And greetings. Hi, how are you? Remember, we are using pictures to provide examples so that the child learns to use pictures to communicate back to us. So we need to talk about things that the child finds interesting, motivating, and useful. Use short, simple language, speak slowly, and pause at times during the conversational flow. Use lots of repetition as you describe ongoing events. Keep in mind that this will initially slow down your communication, but that's okay because you're also learning, and this will help you to understand how hard it is to use picture-based augmentative communication systems. It is just like learning a new language. To maximize the child's learning, we should aim to use pictures to communicate with the child at least 20 times per hour. This might sound like too much on top of everything else you have to do, but think about how verbal kids learn to talk. By the time they are 18 months old, they have been exposed to approximately 4,400 hours of language. That is 8 hours a day of hearing spoken language for 18 months. So if a nonverbal child is exposed to picture-based communication for only 10 minutes per day, then it would take them 84 years to reach the same level of language exposure as the 18-month-old verbal child. Our goal is that the child will eventually start pointing at the pictures to tell you things, praise them, and continue using aided language to have a conversation with them. Aided language should be used in a turn-taking manner, and focus should be placed on having an enjoyable shared interaction together.
So many great points brought up with that. I like how they talked about providing it in motivating, interesting, and useful activities, because we know learning doesn't happen if we're not engaged and we don't find meaning in what we're doing. So trying to incorporate it there. I love the point about like giving a concrete number to try to aim for, I think is helpful. So at least 20 times an hour, so that we can in a school day get up to that, you know, maybe 200 times a day or plus, you know. I loved that point. Using aided language input for not just directing behavior, but for all the different functions of communication. So for commenting, for describing how the student is feeling, asking questions, talking to friends. So all those different reasons why we communicate, we want to provide that aided language input. We want to provide that demonstration of it. So many good points, Jeanna. What else? What am I missing?
Yeah, I liked how she referred to the Jane Corson quote again to help reinforce that. And then that she hit on the 20 times per day, because we had just talked about kind of setting a goal for yourself that, you know, the focus goes on you. Because last time when we talked about presuming potential, we really talked about how it fell on us to help them learn and how to find it, make it engaging, and then find access and help them learn and everything. So by setting that goal for yourself, that's again a way you can show progress. And you are going to see progress, because as the more that you provide that aided language input, you're going to see progress from that with our AAC users. So yeah, no, I liked, and then yeah, the different types of communication functions, sharing and showing, that's like one of my favorites, because kids love to share and show things that they did. So finding different unique ways or different people that they can go share and show, and that's a great way to work on communication as well for them and to make it motivating. All right. Oh goodness.
It's so good. Let's watch it again.
All right, so we have a different video for you. This is a family who has a popular YouTube channel, and they have a child who uses a snap core first, I believe, from Toby Dynamax, and we're going to see how they do aided language input.
Good reading. Go, go.
Cars go.
They do. Cars go.
Trains go.
Trains go.
Trucks go.
Trucks go.
Boats go.
Philip, do boats go?
Go.
They do.
Go.
You're right. Boats go. Look at that.
Planes go.
Planes go.
Go. Motorcycles go.
They do. They go.
Go. What else do you know that can go, go, go?
Let's think about that. Philip, let's look at this. What other things can go?
Yeah.
Let's look at the word list. And I think if we find this one with all the cars, it's called transportation. What are the things on here that go? Do you see anything? Do you see anything that might go?
Yeah.
Car insurance.
Car insurance. Well, if you are going to go in a car, then you would need car insurance before you go. That's true. What about this one?
Airplane.
Airplane.
Yeah.
Russell, do airplanes go?
Yeah.
They do. What about
Bus.
a bus? Does a bus go?
Car wash.
Car wash, yeah. If you go in your car and it gets really dirty, you should take it to the car wash and wash it all up. Give it a bath. That was really good reading, Russell. Thank you. That was a good book about things that go. You want to say thank you to Russell?
It's an ambulance.
An ambulance, right. Here, let's look at this.
Thank you.
you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Russell.
All done.
All done.
We're all done with the book. Are we driving a car? Okay, everyone drive your car so that we can go.
Go.
Okay, ready? Look right there, we're gonna drive. Okay. Drive your car, Philip. Like this. Drive your car. Go. Go. Go car. And then you go beep, beep,
Beep, beep.
beep, beep. Bye. Bye.
Oh my gosh, love that video. There's again so many good things. Love that the sibling is reading, because how engaged was Philip with his brother reading. Same like if you're in the school, like having peers read, and then you can focus on providing that aided language input to them, or if the peer knows how to use the system too, like that's so great. And then the relating to background knowledge that they were doing, of like trying to like, it wasn't just reading the book, because that can be boring. They made it engaging. They talked about other things that they know about. And then they were playing the cars at the end and making them go. And then the mom, how good is she that he said car insurance, but she related it back to the car. And that's exactly what you do. Like anything that they say, you may think initially that it is off topic, but no, let's make it a part of the topic. Let's figure out a way to make go a part of that car insurance. And she did that, and she did it a couple of other times as well. And it was perfect. So
It was so good. I love how they did it with repetition. So she kept saying go every time, she just fixed on one word there and just kept doing it. And not once did we hear touch it, say it, find it. There was none of that, because that's not what aided language input is, right? That's not what pausing and giving wait time is. It is total receptive input, right? She was just touching that button when she was saying it in conjunction with this fun activity that they were doing. And there was no expectation that he needed to say it. He was looking at it, so she knew he was being engaged with it. And then he did do it once on his own, which was awesome, but she just kept going. So that was great. We saw total aided language input, total demonstration, right? That receptive input. So love that. And I was going to bring up the point where just verbal, like whatever he said, she referenced it back to the activity there. She didn't say, no, that's not right. You need to touch something different. They just did total normal, like language development things. When a kiddo says something that's not, the answer you were looking for, you just reference it back to that activity, and then you give a demonstration of a different answer as well. So just such a good video.
all right. Oh gosh, there we go.
Okay, so when we're going through response not required, some misconceptions or some challenges that you might face. So that thought that AAC is only an expressive tool, right? We have there's that idea that you put the device in front of the student, you put the manual communication board in front of the student, and they need to start using it right now to express themselves. And we do that by telling them to touch it. You might say, touch this button, say it, find it, because we think it's only an expressive tool. But the fact is that AAC facilitates receptive language as well as expressive language eventually. And it must be used receptively in order to develop those expressive skills. The student is not going to may not start using an AAC system right away. We have to put in all that receptive learning. We need to teach those symbols receptively before we'll use it expressively. So getting away from that mindset that, we have this thing here, we're going to start using it right now to express ourselves, taking that mind shift to that it is a receptive learning tool as well. And we need to put our focus there with, aided language input, pausing without a response. A challenge, the expectation of a response is inherent in classroom discourse, right? It just is, because we are at school to learn. So we ask a question and we want a response because we're we're trying to teach and we want to have all this learning happen. So there is that expectation of a response. So that is a challenge to think through and to maybe, kind of dismantle and try to kind of make a mindset shift. So the fact is that ample aided language input over time and across, different people and activities and context without that expectation of a verbal or a expressive response is inherent to language development. If we are wanting to teach communication, then we have to follow normal language development, and we know that there is lots of receptive learning that happens first, and so we have to do that. We have to make space and time for that in order to teach language and communication. So I think, though, just taking some time to acknowledge challenges and acknowledge those inherent misconceptions does help us then to find solutions for ways to make it happen in the classroom. So it's good to kind of go through these and think them through.
All right. And other things to keep in mind for individuals who use AC. Communication can be hard work. I always go back to a LAMP training that I was at with John Halloran, and he talks about how their lives are already sabotaged. Because communication is really hard work for them. They're not able to communicate as efficiently as, you or I are able to do on a daily basis. And so just keeping that in mind, that they need that time to process and to work through and to find the words and to not sabotage each part of their day to make it kind of a communication opportunity and a testing situation. But to really let them just take their time and communicate when they can and not always have to have a response required. Another point to keep in mind is that processing often takes longer. We know this. We talked about last time whenever we talked about time and how many seconds it can sometimes take for a child to process through what was said, what they want their response to be, and then to be able to kind of motor program and get that response out in whatever way they're accessing communication. It takes a while. And then to remember that repetition is usually required. I mean, they say that, variety is the spice of life. Well, I feel like in education, repetition with variety is the spice of life, right? We need to have that repetition for them. Our students cannot learn unless we're providing repetitive exposure and opportunities. But we need that variety in there to really help them generalize those skills and what they're learning as well. Ample modeling is needed before a response can be expected. So we've been hitting on this a lot today, but we have to be providing that repeated aided language input across environments, across situations, and using the words more than one time before we can ever expect them to then be able to expressively use that word. Going back to what Maggie had just talked about, that the tool, it is often used as an expressive tool. You see people often think that, but really it's for that receptive piece as well. They're learning the language and then they can learn how to express on it as well. Communication tools should always be available. This is my first recommendation when people talk about what's my first step with AAC is access. You have to have access before you can do aided language input, before you can think about any of the other things. You have to have access. That is your first thing. The student may not always, or the AAC user may not always take advantage of having access and then begin talking on it, but that's okay because they have it available to them. Those opportunities are definitely going to be missed if they don't have access. So access has to be out and available to them at all times. Providing our AAC users with an out. So what we mean by this is if you're giving them a choice board, having the option of different or not here. I remember it was a year ago, Maggie, that we learned that at Closing the Gap from the great
Sheldon.
Love her, and never thought about it before. That really, if you don't provide those outs, you're really asking the AAC user to make a selection, not a choice. So you have to provide them a way, because we don't know what they're thinking. Going back to communication, it's that relaying of messages that the other person, you don't know what the other person's wanting to tell you. So we have to always keep that in mind, that we may not know, it may not be here. And so we have to provide that out for them to be able to communicate that to us as well. And then remembering that no is a valid response. They should be able to tell us no to something. It may not be able to be accepted at that time that no, that they don't want to do their math. But, explaining whatever's going to happen if they do say no, but that they can say no to us and that that's okay for that.
I love all those points, and I love how you brought up like access, and like that's the first step where you're like, what is it, you get started in AAC, what's the first step? It's access, and having it out doesn't mean the student's going to use it, but it means that we as the communication partner are going to have it there, and we're going to be seeing it so that we can learn the vocabulary, because we can't teach the vocabulary if we don't know it. And I know that holds me up a lot too, where I'm like, hang on, I got to find that word. So you need yourself to be challenged to provide that aided language input so that you can learn the vocabulary. We learn it as the teacher, as the educator, as the person being the communication partner. We learn it by using it. And so with access, like it's kind of like twofold, right? Access is having it available and having it up. And the other part of access is us learning it so that we can teach it and that we can demonstrate its use. So it's definitely like having it out. It's great for the student, but it's also really good for us as the communication partner, because then we can learn it and we can use it. So yeah, they might not use it, but we can be using it to teach it.
Yeah.
Some other food for thought when we're thinking through response not required and providing that aided language input. Again, learning can be expressed through multiple modalities. And I think that we are more familiar and comfortable with this through UDL, Universal Design for Learning, that we know students learn in different ways and that they can express their learning in different ways. So some students might express that they understand something or are learning this thing that we're teaching by looking at us when we're, sharing information. Maybe they're going to seek out something and that's going to show us that they're learning, moving towards something, lingering on. We'll see this like when we're reading, a student, we can see progress in emergent literacy skills when they are looking at the picture longer and they're lingering on during a book reading. They could be sharing things, all these different ways. So there's not only one way to show that they learn something. So us like expecting that response, like telling us the answer, is not the only way that we need for them to show us that they're learning. So it's kind of taking that pressure off where we need them. I think sometimes that's where that comes from. There's like, show us on your talker, tell us on your talker. We want to have that so that we can say, hey, they're demonstrating learning. Take that pressure off. There's lots of different ways that the student is showing us that they're learning. So just kind of thinking out the box, thinking through a UDL lens to that. And then our goal is to teach communication. We want the student to learn language. We want them to grow their receptive language. We want to grow their expressive language. We want them to become communicators. Our goal is not compliance. And if we're telling a student to do this, touch that, say that, that is not learning. That is not communication. That is compliance. And that is not what we want our goal to be when we are providing AAC or when we are providing communication learning. We want to teach. We don't want to test. So kind of making that mind shift as well. Creating that culture of teaching and getting away from that compliance piece is an important role as communication partners.
For sure. All right, and some more tips. Don't back yourself into a conversational corner. And great ways to avoid that backing into a corner and getting into that whole testing situation that Maggie was just talking about in the compliance, and making it more about just communication and open-ended experience would be to ask open-ended questions. And whenever you ask open-ended questions, you really can get better conversation and you ask better questions whenever you don't stick to like where it has a direct answer and it's more just about experiences and thoughts. Use those pauses with those expectant looks. So we've talked about this before, where you're looking, they know that you would like them to engage back with you as well. It's not that they have to have a certain answer or anything like that, but it's just that they know that it's their turn in the conversation if they would like to participate as well. And observe and describe their body language. I think we've talked about this before with the referential referencing to their body language and then providing that aided language input on, you know, what we think that means. So I think in one of the videos that we just watched that they talked about, like, you know, if they're laying down on the desk and rubbing their eyes, that, you know, she didn't say it in the video, but that's where we would have said, you know, oh, it looks like you're leaning down, you're rubbing your eyes a lot. I think that that means you're tired. Or I hear your belly grumbling. I think that you might be hungry. Are you ready for lunch? So providing that aided language input and teaching them that, you know, signs that we see from their body language could mean these things on their device, and teaching them how to use that and to be able to communicate that in the future as well. And showing them how to get an out as well, to give an out, or get out of a situation and say that they want something different or that it's not here. We have to teach that in order for them to be able to later communicate it as well.
So kind of how we can teach students how to learn how to create their own outs. Here are some things that we can do to help support that. So if you see that the student isn't giving a response, or you've waited, you know, you've given your 30 plus seconds of wait time, how do you keep it rolling? So you could say something like this: you don't seem to have an opinion on this one. Let's check with your friend, which I think is super motivating, you know, to like not you just give the response, but check with the peers in the classroom. Or, ooh, I can see you're thinking, okay. Or if they're looking at something up at the board, or if they're looking at a picture on the book, ooh, I can see that you are looking at the pictures. You can offer an opinion. I think, ooh, you know, I think this book is scary. Ooh, that scares me. And then just move on. You've filled in that conversational turn by giving your opinion, and now you go on to the next thing. Or this is, I love this one, Jeanna, and I feel like this is something that is really good. You don't seem interested in this. How often is our student telling us by their disinterest that they are not interested, right? Like, let's just acknowledge it. You are not
Days
interested.
ago, it happened to me. I was like, I don't think you like this activity. Should we do something different?
And now, not maybe all of the time can you say that,
Yeah.
but maybe you could try something different within the activity, or a different, change something within the activity, because not always can we totally change what we're doing, but we can change something about it, you know? So let's try something different. Different is such a good word, right? So
I love different, yeah.
So these are just different. It's nice to have these like in your mind when you're doing something, so that you can, because you do sometimes feel like, oh gosh, now what do I say? Yeah, I know you don't have to respond, but what am I supposed to say to keep the, you know, the conversation and the lesson rolling? So these are some good little phrases to keep in your head to help you out when you are working through the lesson. But yeah, I love that one. You don't seem interested. Let's do something different.
Oh goodness, I think I skipped through. Okay, we did that. Okay. All right, so we have a video. It's just going to talk about some more strategies and tips when providing aided language input.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarita, and welcome to the Communication Toolbox. Today we're going to talk about a strategy called aided language stimulation, which can really help people in learning to use AAC. For a child to learn to use AAC, like a communication book, a communication board, or perhaps a device, they need to see people around them using their AAC strategy. This is when we use a strategy called aided language stimulation, or ALS. Aided language stimulation is a commonly used strategy and is sometimes also known as modelling. It involves pointing to pictures on a person's AAC as you speak. You might use the child's AAC with aided language stimulation, or you might have your own AAC that you can use next to the child. In ALS, we can point to keywords that match to what they're saying. For example, I could say, "Where shall we go?" Think about a child's current communication and model at a level that matches. For example, if a child is not using words yet, you could just point to one word. But if they're learning to put words together, you might point to two words. Research shows that using ALS can help a child learn to use their AAC strategy by showing them what the pictures mean, showing them how to use it, and letting them see that their AAC strategy is used and valued by people around them. Thanks for watching. To learn more about ALS, get in touch. You could have a look at our Facebook page, check out our YouTube channel, or...
All right. Well, I like that video. I think they touched on points that we've talked about before, but I liked how they broke it down a little bit more with modeling at whatever the language level is of the AAC user. So, because we kind of always talk about that one up, but they really broke it down. Like if you do have a child who isn't really using words yet, you're just going to be modeling, that one really main word that's going to communicate that message the most, and provide that aided language input for that. And then, as they start to say words, then you're going to do the one up where you then do 2 words, and then you keep going. So as you continue, the child continues to grow with your language, your responsibility for providing that aided language input is going to increase. You're going to have to start providing aided language input for more words at one time as well.
All right, and another video that's going to go over aided language input. It's another good one. I could watch aided language input videos all day long. I'm always like, yes, that's such a good way to describe it or explain it. I love it.
To build communication with AAC, modeling is a valuable strategy. Modeling means you point to words on the AAC tool as you speak. Ready, set, go! Look, I like this book. Ah, look, we go to places, more outdoor places. Beach.
We go to beach.
We went to the beach. You cannot simply place an AAC tool in front of someone and expect that they will know how to use it to communicate. We need to model. AAC learners need to see AAC in use to communicate real messages in real situations. So, point to words on the AAC. When you first start, it can be difficult and feel clumsy. Everyone feels that way at first. Start small and build up your modeling. Focus on a few words to model at first. Every time you model, it will get easier. The most important thing is to start, give it a go. Get others involved. Who else in the team can model? Get friends, family members, classmates, and siblings modeling. The more the merrier. Now, you can model on your iPad or device, or even on a paper-based version. Model throughout the day, especially during real, meaningful, and motivating activities. Model in conversations. Show how you can use different words to communicate different messages. You do not have to model every word that you say. And sometimes the grammar might be wrong. All these things are okay. Modeling does not need to be perfect. You will make mistakes. Every time the learner sees you model, it builds their knowledge. Your modeling will help them to learn how they can use words to communicate. Make it fun and enjoy the adventure. For more information, read our full article in Learn AAC.
So good. I love how she just says, it will feel clumsy. I think that's like the best way to do it. Because sometimes, it feels clumsy. You're like, I have this activity, I have my student, and then I have this additional thing. And sometimes it's like, I just don't know where to put my hands, right? You're like, it's like, how am I doing all this? It can feel clumsy. It can feel awkward. And knowing that that is the case for everybody. Nobody has started providing aided language input as knowing what they're doing.
Felt like a rock star at it right away.
Yeah, no, it feels really uncomfortable. Whenever you're starting something new or you're like a beginner in something new, it feels really awkward. And so I think just knowing that that's the case helps, because we don't like to do things that feel weird and clumsy and awkward for us. So knowing that that is okay and that's expected kind of helps. I like that. And then how she said, like, you might make mistakes. You will make mistakes.
You will
make mistakes, and that's to be expected. And that is okay.
It's good for our students to see it.
Yeah.
To see that.
And an imperfect imperfect aided language input is always better than not providing aided language input. A not great demonstration is better than no demonstration of AAC. So taking that pressure off that it might not, you will make mistakes. It will feel awkward. Definitely helps. I love that point. I also liked when she was showing those pictures of them being at the beach, and she said, "We go," and then she self-talked the steps, the pathway to get to the word that she wanted. So she was saying, okay, categories, places, beach. That is a really good little strategy too that we try to incorporate, because that helps our students learn. It's a demonstration of the pathway to get to those words. So it was just a great video all around. So many good points.
For sure. Okay, so now we've made it to our recap then. So all languages learned through modeling or that aided language input, whether it's developmental language from birth, if it's learning that foreign language, or for our AAC users, learning an AAC system. All of these languages have to be learned through that exposure without a response required. Modeling means that you're going to speak your words on their AAC system. So going back to that, and I know it says modeling here, but we're going to continue to probably mostly refer to it as that aided language input. And again, it's just speaking your words on their AAC system so that they can learn their language that way. That aided language input may be needed before response may be elicited. We talked a lot about this, that there's going to be hours and hours of us exposing them to vocabulary and the language on their AAC system across environments, across situations, using the words for different purposes of communication function before we can expect them to be able to then use it expressively as well. So a lot of learning needs to go into it. Communication is inherently motivating. If it isn't, then it's compliance, and we've gotten ourselves backed into that testing situation, and they're not going to learn near as much. Do you remember what is the rate? I don't remember the statistics, but have you let play-based, like if you do something play-based, like they learn it 10 times faster? Isn't it 10 times
something like
faster?
something like
But
yeah,
that, I think that play, I know it's a horrible example because I didn't know exact quote, but that just goes
learn better and play. Yes.
Yeah, it goes into play that, like, if you're going to do that testing compliance situation, they're not going to pick it up as quickly. They're not going to learn it. But if you do it in a motivating and engaging, activity, way, method, more natural, it's going to be motivating. They are going to pick it up quicker.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, and to remember to give an out using that different or that no, and that modeling without expectation of that response. So response not required.
All right, where to learn more? Project Core, AssistedWare, PrAACtical AAC. We've shared these sites before, but they are some of our favorites and our go-to. So Project Core is great. They have so many, like 11 learning modules that are quick, easy to digest on your own. I'll just go on there and randomly watch ones that I've already watched, but it's so helpful. They break down topics into really great, understandable ways. But then you can also use these if you're doing trainings with your school teams. They can really help structure a training for yourself. So definitely check them out. You will learn new things there. AssistedWare, we shared a video from AssistedWare. They have an AssistedWare blog. They have great resources and information. And then, of course, PrAACtical AAC. It's probably one of our top favorite blogs where we go all of the time. We have signed up to get email alerts. So every day when there's a new posting, it just comes right to our email, and it's just part of our morning routine when we log in for the day to check out what the blog post is for the day and read it or watch the video that's shared. And it's just a great way to keep up with your AAC learning and an easy, just normal part of your day way.
Mm-hmm. And that's it, folks. So thank you so much for joining us for this video. And we look forward to discussing this module of response not required more in depth with you in our follow-up discussion. Thank you so much.